A good story. Foreclosure wave sweeping U.S. crests in Chicago. So IRS foreclosures are up in Chicago. Chicago leads the country in a nationwide wave of spiking foreclosure rates almost a year after pandemic eviction moratorium ended. I don't know. The eviction moratorium had some effect, but that's not really a foreclosure. A report released in April by real estate data aggregator Adam has bestowed Chicago with a dubious honor. Amid a national surge in residential foreclosure rates, Chicagoans are currently losing their homes in greater numbers than in any other metro area in the country. A total of 50,759 U.S. properties started the foreclosure process in quarter one of 2022, up 67% from the previous quarter and up 188% from a year ago, the report stated, with Chicago alone seeing over 3,000 foreclosures in the first 3 months of the year. Now, again, these numbers are a little bit skewed in the sense that if you had zero because there was a moratorium, and then, well, you never had really zero, but many of them were in the moratorium, not all of them were. And then you take the moratorium away, well, you would expect the number year to year, year to date would go way up. And it has. If you interpret the numbers as a per housing unit rate, Cleveland manages to pull ahead of Chicago with almost 1 in every 500 homes foreclosed since the start of 2022. But by the same metric, Illinois still leads the nation on the state level, close to 1 out of every 800 homes. California, as the country's most populous state, wins out on the state with the highest raw numbers of foreclosed homes this year. More than 5,300 households in the Garden State had begun the foreclosure process as of April. Well, in California, they don't have a judicial process. They simply need to place an ad in a newspaper, and then they can foreclose very quickly, unlike here in Chicago or Illinois, where we are a judicial state. You have to go to court and get a court order in order to sell a piece of property. Not the same in California. But now that it's over. Okay, as shocking as the spike in home loss is, experts said it was predictable. The inevitable result of the end of the pandemic eviction moratorium. Again, it's not the end of the moratorium that started the foreclosures, right? The foreclosures are a result of people not paying. The moratorium simply delayed people not paying, right? And so that it stopped the foreclosures. I mean, it pushed them ahead, but it didn't stop them. It's not the cause of foreclosures, right? The cause is people aren't paying. That's the cause. Enacted by Congress in March 2020 under former President Donald Trump and struck down in August 2021 by a Supreme Court ruling under current President Joe Biden. I like the way they do that. It was a national exercise in decommoditization housing that's staved off homelessness for an estimated 1.35 million people. Did it? But now it's over. It's in great part, this is the fault of lifting of the moratorium. The dean of the Graduate Studies of Florida, again, it's not cause and effect. It's not 100% to blame. Well, again, it can't be blamed. There's always a natural rate of foreclosure, but it is a major factor. It's a major factor of the higher numbers, I guess. It's the moratorium lifting, agreed professor of Penn State University who specializes in bankruptcy law. During the moratorium, people weren't eligible for mortgage mitigation. Now we're seeing the market respond to that. While agreeing on the general cause of the foreclosure wave, the pair offered differing explanations as to the granular mechanisms driving it. Riley suggested it may be a result of the Federal Reserve interest rate, the rate at which the Federal Open Market Committee suggests commercial banks borrow or lend money to each other. When the rate is low, consumers can get lower rates on their credit cards, loans, and adjustable rate mortgages. But at the moment, it's rising from around 0.25% in March 2020 to around 0.75 to 1% as of May. The increasing figure reflects the 40-year high in inflation the U.S. is currently experiencing. It does not yet reflect that because interest rates are, theoretically, interest rates are a portion of inflation and risk. right? And so if inflation's at 8%, then theoretically, interest rates should be at least 8% plus the risk factor. But we're nowhere near that, are we? So this is one reason why we have inflation. Anyway, that's my opinion. The increasing figure reflects the 40-year high in inflation the U.S. is currently experiencing and makes it hard for property owners without much capital to hold on to their unprofitable buildings. As the U.S. working class struggles to make ends meet, their economic hardship trickles up to the rest of society, including their landlords. I don't know if it trickles up to they are society, aren't they? The people who work and die and live and die in this country, aren't they? Aren't they society? I think it is. The other thing that could be affecting the foreclosure rate is the Federal Reserve interest rate. It could be making it harder for landlords to hold on to non-rent paying properties. As small landlords shed these properties, larger development firms will often come in to buy them on the cheap, sometimes with the blessing of municipalities looking to avoid the crime rate that comes with abandoned or vacant buildings. While large firms buying up properties staves off the immediate concern, the result is usually an increase in rent or home ownership costs in the area, further driving out residents who cannot afford the rising prices. It's the economic foundations of gentrification. Vacant properties are not good for anyone, and it's not always easy to tell if it's residents who are going to be disposed or if it's the remote investor who's just abandoning the property. Johnson offered another view. He suggested that there simply weren't enough homes, particularly affordable homes, in many areas of the country. The cancellation of the moratorium only exacerbated the problem. This is a huge inventory shortage. That's a total number of housing units. It is true that there's an inventory problem, and that's one reason why homes sell so quickly now, because there's not a lot of homes on the market, and there are still people looking to move. Figures in the Pew Research Center corroborate this. There were an average of 1.5 million monthly active home listings in the U.S. in October 2016, while in January 2022 there were only 400,000. Oh, so that less than a third. During the same period, in the median cost of the home in the U.S. rose from a little over $300,000 to over $400,000. Renters fare a little better, with the national average rent rising by 18% since 2017, more so in the metro areas. The rent market research site Apartment List estimated that the average apartment in Chicago alone was 11% more expensive in April 2022 compared to April 2021. It's quite a rise in just a year. There's just not enough roofs to live under. This assertion is something challenged by analysts on the left, who point out that that as of 2020, there were some 16 million vacant homes in the U.S. compared to a homeless population that hovers around 550,000. But Johnson called this a red herring. If someone on the East Coast has their home foreclosed, he said, it wouldn't much matter to them. There is a surplus of housing in a town on the West Coast. Additionally, the number of homes affordable to people making less than 50% of the area's median income accounts for only 35% of the nation's housing stock, and state-subsidized public housing accounts for less than 1%. Some large metro areas, such as Los Angeles and Chicago, even have a history of destroying their public and affordable housing stock, such as when Chicago Housing Authority infamously began tearing down the Cabrini Green public housing project in 2000. That's over 20 years ago, under the direction of then Mayor Richard Daley. All this means that even if many homes are technically available, they likely won't be held at a price that a recent foreclose can afford. The cold comfort of both experts offered is that the current foreclosure crisis is not as intense as the experience by the nation during the 2008 Great Recession. Riley called the 2008 crisis a seize-up of the market, one she said we're nowhere close to. Well, let's hope that's true. Johnson said that while the current crisis stems from an undersupply of housing, the 2008 crisis was caused by a speculative bubble bursting on an oversupply of single-family housing. There may be places that are hit hard based on the population changes, but it's a matter of undersupply versus oversupply, he said. Neither expert had concrete ideas on how to solve the current crisis. Riley urged anyone facing foreclosure to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy if they could, while Johnson suggested this wasn't a problem that can be fully solved by market manipulation. A 2020 collection of analysis by the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs vehemently agreed. It arrived at the conclusion that the only solution to the foreclosing and housing crisis was housing decommoditization. It suggested a strategy that instead prioritized state and community-owned homes that were not subject to profit speculation. Okay. Back in Chicago, the city government on Friday announced a much more capitalist-friendly initiative to combat its nation-leading foreclosure spike. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, along with Alderman Carlos Ramirez, her frequent critic from the left of Lori Lightfoot. And that's a capitalist remedy? I don't know. Let's find out. Officially opened Emmett Street Apartments in the city's mixed-income Logan Square community. All the 100 apartment units in the building will be made affordable to people making at or below 60% of the city's area median income, while half will be reserved as public housing units. How is that a capitalist solution? I have no idea whether anybody could even get off saying that. I am excited that after years of community organizing and struggle, we are finally cutting the ribbon on a beautiful building that will be housing 100 working families in the heart of Logan Square, Ramirez Rosa said in a prepared statement. However, one thinks the housing crisis should be handled. There's a catch to the whole situation. Despite the current foreclosure rate being the highest since the pandemic began, it is still lower than the average pre-pandemic foreclosure rate. Only about half as many foreclosures were initiated in the first quarter of 2022 as there were begun in the first quarter of 2020. Adams' research predicted we will eventually see a return to historically normal foreclosure levels, perhaps as soon as by the end of the year. It's likely that we'll continue to see significant month-over-month and year-over-year growth through the second quarter of 2022, but still won't reach historically normal levels of foreclosures until the end of the year at the earliest, unless the U.S. economy takes a significant turn for the worst. In other news, Wells Fargo CEO Charlie Scheff told the Washington Post earlier this week there was no question the U.S. economy is headed for a dive. Okay, so again, I think, I don't know what's moving up on me today. Anyway, that's it. I don't understand. First, I don't understand how that is a capitalist solution. And by predicting that it's going to get to normal levels, historical levels, that's a no-brainer. Of course it will. That's because that's the normal level. We got to go back to normal. My own opinion is, and I see this a lot because I help people with foreclosures and modifications, more and more of these mortgage companies and mortgage servicing companies are actively participating in getting loan modifications to people. So they don't want to foreclose. That was the death knell of their industry, in 2008. There was a huge glut and the price of homes fell dramatically because there were so many available because everybody went into foreclosure and they foreclosed on everyone. It wasn't until 2013, 2014 that they started doing a lot of loan modifications instead of going through the foreclosure process. A lot of that had to do with municipalities. In Chicago, they had a program to stop the foreclosures and got the homeowners and the mortgage companies together to come up with a loan modification if possible. And I think I'm seeing a lot of that now.